Emergency in the lab. The room was full of blinking lights, strange tools, and quiet hums. Alien students stood around the training table, ready for another day of medical lessons. Their instructor, an older alien with silver skin and 4 arms, spoke in a slow and clear voice. "Today we will practice deep tissue scans with simulated wounds." The students nodded, their long fingers gripping advanced scanners and laser tools. Then it happened. A loud crack filled the room. One of the younger students screamed. He had slipped on a wet floor tile and crashed into a sharp metal frame. His leg was cut badly, very badly. Blood, dark purple and thick, started pouring out fast. The cut was deep, slicing through skin and muscle. "Get the emergency kit," the instructor shouted. "Clear the table." Panic spread. The students scattered. Machines beeped wildly. One alien fainted. Another dropped a scanner, which shattered on the floor. The injured student screamed in pain. His breathing became fast. His skin changed color. The med team called for a surgical room. "Prep full sedation. Activate the nanobot field. Bring the plasma sealers." Then the door opened. A human trainee walked in. He looked calm. Too calm for what he saw. He walked straight through the chaos toward the bleeding student. "What are you doing here?" the instructor shouted. "Helping," the human said simply. "You're not certified." "I don't need to be." The human dropped his bag on the table. No glowing tools, no machines, just a small metal box with something strange inside. Thread, needles, and a small bottle of clear liquid. The instructor looked confused. "That's not medical-grade equipment." The human didn't answer. He cleaned his hands, opened the bottle, and poured it over the wound. The injured alien winced, but the bleeding slowed. The other student stood still, watching. Then, with calm hands, the human took the needle, pulled the thread through, and began to stitch the wound. Simple, clean, precise. The room went silent. 1 stitch. 2 stitches. 3. The bleeding stopped. The alien's breathing slowed. His skin returned to normal color. Within minutes, the wound was closed with a neat line of basic stitches. No lasers, no nanobots, no AI. The human tied the final knot, wiped the leg clean, and stepped back. "He's stable now," the human said. "No need for surgery." The alien instructor looked stunned. "You did this with string?" The human gave a small smile. "We call it stitching. It's old, but it works." The injured student sat up slowly. "I feel fine." The other students began whispering. "Is this real?" "That was fast. Why didn't we learn this?" The instructor walked forward, staring at the simple stitches. He touched them gently. "Primitive," he muttered, "but strong." The human packed up his things. "Where I come from, in emergencies, we don't wait for machines, we use what we have." Later that day, the school replayed the security footage in a large hall. Dozens of alien doctors, researchers, and professors watched in silence. They had seen surgery before. They had seen blood. They had seen machines work wonders. But they had never seen something so simple, work so well. A senior doctor paused the video and turned to the group. "We use lasers, nanobots, and full sedation." Yet he stopped the bleeding in under 3 minutes. Another doctor added, "No energy waste, no machines, no prep time." He acted faster than our entire trained team. The room stayed quiet. Then a young student in the back asked, "Why don't we learn that method?" No one had an answer. Back in his dorm, the human sat quietly, reading a book. A soft knock came at the door. He opened it. Outside stood 5 alien students. Each one held a notebook. One held a practice dummy. Another had a needle and some thread. "Can you teach us?" the lead one asked. The human smiled and nodded. Of course. They sat down in a circle. No machines, just hands, thread, and the desire to learn. Far above the academy, orbiting in silence, Earth Command received a quiet report. Subject: Human Trainee Performance Status: Unexpected interest from alien medical community. Message. They called it primitive. Now they want to learn it. Shock in the medical school. The medical hall was full. Professors, surgeons, and senior alien researchers filled every seat. The lights dimmed. A large screen on the wall lit up with a red border, a sign of emergency. Footage. Everyone leaned forward. The video began. It showed a simple lab accident. A young alien student bleeding out. Panic everywhere. Machines failing to respond fast enough. Then came the moment that changed everything. A single human walked through the chaos. No panic, no high-tech equipment, just a bottle of antiseptic, a needle, and thread. The room was silent as the human began stitching, simple movements, precise hands, steady breathing. In less than 3 minutes, the bleeding stopped. The alien student calmed. Life signs returned to normal. Then the final image froze on screen. A perfect line of basic stitches, holding the wound together. One professor whispered, "No bots, no scans." Another muttered, "Just thread?" The head of the school stood up slowly. This was done by a trainee, with basic Earth tools? The answer came from the assistant next to him. Yes, and the student recovered fully in 2 hours. Shock rippled through the room. Why haven't we used this before? Why was this not in our training? Is it legal? But one voice, calm and sharp, cut through the noise. He saved a life faster than we ever have. Later that day, in the main courtyard, alien students gathered in clusters. Some laughed, some argued, some stared at the medical building in silence. He used sewing tools. That's not medicine, it's survival. No, it's something we forgot. The footage had been sent to other medical academies across the star system. It went viral within hours. Some called it a joke. Others called it revolutionary, but no one could ignore it. Because it worked. Inside the school's private chambers, a group of elite surgeons met behind closed doors. The oldest among them, wearing gold robes and a metal headband, spoke carefully. "We have gone far with our science. Too far, perhaps. Machines do the work. We watch." Another replied, "But the human, he used his hands, his senses." "Exactly. And he saved a life in half the time." They paused. Then came a question no one wanted to ask. What else have we forgotten? That night, the human sat in the empty lab practicing stitches on synthetic skin. He didn't hear the door open. 3 alien professors stood watching him. One cleared his throat. "We reviewed your method." The human looked up. "I didn't mean to break rules." "You didn't," the professor said. "You reminded us of something important." The human tilted his head. "What's that?" The elder smiled. "That real medicine starts with the hands, not the machines." Across the stars, alien schools began opening files marked primitive Earth practices. For decades, those files were ignored. Too simple, too outdated. Now they were gold field surgery, pressure point healing, old bandaging, simple stitching. Things humans had used for centuries, when they had nothing but willpower and thread. And for the first time in galactic history, aliens wanted to learn it. But in the shadows of progress, not everyone was pleased. Inside a quiet control center, a cold voice echoed, "If aliens start trusting Earth methods, Earth will no longer be seen as weak." A screen showed the human trainee. "Keep an eye on him." And then the lights went dark. The debate begins. The lecture hall was packed again, not with students, but with professionals, alien doctors, surgeons, and even off-world observers. The room buzzed with one question: was the human right? At the center of the room stood a tall alien professor, arms crossed, eyes cold. "Stitches?" he scoffed. "You want to bring back needle and thread like we live in the Stone Age?" Across from him, another professor stood up, nervous but steady. "He saved a life before we could even activate a scan," the crowd murmured. "It was one case," the senior surgeon snapped. "Lucky." "No," said a calm voice from the Back. All heads turned. The human trainee walked into the room. No armor, no titles, just his toolkit. Twice, actually. He placed a small holopad on the table and activated the footage. Another alien student, hurt during a training exercise. Severe. Internal bleeding. Everyone scrambled for equipment. The human didn't wait. He elevated the legs, applied pressure, rolled the student on their side to help breathing. No cuts, no surgery. The student survived. Fast. Clean. Without tech. The room froze again. The alien professor's jaw clenched. "We have machines for that. But you didn't use them," the human said quietly. "Because you panicked. Your system needs too much time, too many steps." He stepped forward. Sometimes, people don't have time. Out there in the field, people don't wait for laser tools. They die waiting. The silence hit harder than a weapon. One student stood up from the crowd. "Then teach us." The lead professor barked, "We will not replace science with Earth's barbaric tricks." The human didn't blink. "I'm not replacing anything, I'm adding something." A pause. "I don't fear your machines, but you fear a needle and thread?" Gasps echoed. The younger aliens looked at each other. Many nodded. One bold student asked, "Why haven't we learned both?" That was the question no one could answer. Later that evening, in the academy courtyard, two students argued near the glowing fountain. "You think stitching is better than nano-sealing?" "I think if I'm bleeding out on a battlefield, I'd rather have someone who can stop it now, not someone who waits for a drone." Their argument was interrupted by an alert. A student on the second level had fallen, badly. A deep cut across their arm. A group rushed to help. The human arrived last, calm as ever. The medbot hadn't even powered up when the human opened his kit. Within 60 seconds, stitches done. The crowd stood in silence as the injured student looked at their arm and whispered, "That didn't even hurt." That night, alien social media exploded. Human saves another life, again with just a needle. Why isn't this taught? Simplicity wins again. The image of the stitched arm went viral. Needlemaster, Earth knows. Teach us too. But not everyone was celebrating. In a dark office above the academy, the head of alien surgical development stared at the footage. His eyes narrowed. "They're starting to believe in him." He turned to a shadowy figure behind him. "Make sure the next time he steps in, he fails." Back in his room, the human sat stitching synthetic skin in silence. Outside his door, 20 alien students waited in line, eager to learn, not because it looked cool, not because it was old, but because it worked. Alien doctors feel insulted. Academy's great medical hall had never felt so heavy. The top alien doctors, those who wrote the rules of galactic medicine, stood in silence. Their faces were cold, their eyes sharp. In the center of the room stood the human trainee, calm, alone, surrounded by giants in robes of science and pride. One of the senior doctors stepped forward. "Do you know what you've done?" The human nodded. "I helped save lives." "You insulted our legacy," the doctor snapped. "We spent centuries building the most advanced medical systems in the galaxy." Another doctor joined in, voice sharper than a scalpel. "And you think thread and hand stitching is better than our finest machines?" The human didn't flinch. "I don't think it's better," he said. "I think it's faster. And sometimes, faster is what keeps someone alive." The hall burst into anger. Primitive, disrespectful, a trick. But one soft voice rose above them all. It was the young alien student whose life the human had saved. "Would you rather I had died, waiting for your machines?" The room fell silent. The student raised their stitched arm, still healing, still whole. "Your pride didn't save me." His hands did. The doctors froze. Their anger now mixed with something harder to hide, doubt. They turned to their monitors. A report had just come in. Across the galaxy, hospitals were seeing a surge of interest in manual care. Dozens of alien species were requesting Earth-style emergency kits. In some war zones, soldiers were stitching wounds in the field using training videos shared from the academy. The numbers were clear. More lives saved. Faster response times, fewer system failures, and all without machines. Back in the hall, one of the eldest alien doctors stepped forward. Unlike the others, his voice was calm. I served during the border wars. I saw death daily. Back then, we didn't have nanobots or plasma tools. We used cloth, fire, and stitching. He looked at the human. What you've done is not an insult, it's a reminder. The others stared at him stunned. He nodded slowly. You didn't bring shame. You brought balance. But even as some began to understand, others remained cold. One doctor turned and whispered to a colleague, "If this continues, we lose control of medical education." Another replied, "Then we must discredit him." Later that day, the human found a note on his door. "They won't let you teach here again. You embarrassed them." He folded the note calmly. His fingers didn't shake. His eyes didn't blink. Instead, he stepped into the hallway and found hundreds of alien students waiting, from different planets, different systems, different schools. Some held notebooks, others held real skin dummies. One held a needle. "Please." One student said, "Just show us what you know." The human smiled. "No machines today, only thread, only hands, only focus." And from that moment on, a new kind of medicine began to spread, not with machines, but with truth. Experiment in the field. The call came in at midnight. A research team had been attacked in the outer jungle zone, on a wild planet used for biology experiments. One of the alien students was badly hurt. The emergency crew was delayed. Storms blocked. All med drones. No help was coming in time, except one, the human. He was already packing his bag. Thread, needle, antiseptic, cloth. No machines, no bots, just him, and the hope that he wouldn't be too late. The air was thick and hot. The forest was glowing blue under twin moons. Strange creatures hissed in the distance. The human moved fast, following the signal. Finally, he found them. 3 alien students stood beside a large rock. One of them was on the ground, shaking, bleeding, skin pale. A massive gash ran across his side. He was attacked by a spike beast, one of them said. "We tried to stop the bleeding, but it's deep," said another. "Too deep, he needs full surgery." The human dropped to his knees and checked the wound. His face was calm. His hands didn't shake. "We don't have time for surgery," he said, "but we can still save him." He grabbed a heated stone from the campfire, cleaned his blade in the flames, and cut open a small section of skin to drain the pressure. The aliens gasped. "Are you sure?" one asked. The human didn't answer. He had already moved on. With clean hands, he stitched quickly, tight and close, using every drop of focus. He whispered to the wounded student, "Breathe slow. Stay with me." Minutes passed. Then, silence. The bleeding stopped. The color returned to the student's face, his breathing evened out. He was alive. The alien stood in stunned silence. You did it. With fire, thread, and focus?" The human nodded. "Basic field skills. On Earth, this is what we did before the machines came." The students stared at their hands. One of them whispered, "We've learned everything, except how to survive without help." The next morning, the medical shuttle arrived, too late. The patient was already healing. The doctors rushed forward, expecting chaos, but instead, they found a clean, closed wound, stitched by hand. One of them whispered, "Who did this?" The human stood and stretched. "I did." The doctor looked confused. "Without tools?" The human shrugged. "Just the right ones." Word spread faster than fire. Human saves alien life in wild zone. No machines used. Emergency thread. Skills now being requested on all field teams. Who needs bots when you have hands like his? Across dozens of colonies, medical centers started adding new training modules. They didn't call it primitive surgery anymore. They called it direct response medicine, and it was now required. But not everyone was celebrating. In a quiet station above the planet, one shadowed figure spoke to a screen. "He's becoming a symbol," the voice replied. "Symbols can be erased." The figure pressed a button. then start planning his fall. Back at the academy, the human sat under a tree. The alien student he had saved walked up slowly, holding a cane but standing strong. "Why? Did you come alone?" he asked. The human looked up at the stars. "Because sometimes when life is leaving someone, all it takes is one calm hand to pull it back." The student nodded, and together they watched the stars, where the next lesson was already waiting. Students want to learn the old way. The academy couldn't keep it quiet anymore. The story of the human trainee saving lives in the wild had spread to every star system in the network. Medical forums buzzed with discussions. News reports replayed the footage. Emergency teams requested training kits that didn't include lasers, but needles and thread. And now, the students wanted change. It started with whispers, then questions, then demands. One morning, the academy's courtyard filled with students holding signs made from training sheets. "Teach us the hands. We want the old way. Machines fail, we won't." Professors watched from windows in silence. They weren't ready for this. Because this wasn't a request. It was a revolution. Inside the lecture hall, the medical council gathered in panic. This is madness. They want to replace science with Earth's survival tricks. This ends now. But one professor raised a trembling hand. "What if they're not asking to replace science?" The others stared. "What if they're asking to make it stronger?" Silence followed, and then denial. "Impossible. We won't allow it." But they were already too late. That night, in a quiet classroom lit only by handheld lanterns, the human sat cross-legged on the floor. Around him, nearly 100 alien students listened. No screens, no robots, just eyes and hands. "Stitching isn't about thread," the human said. "It's about control, focus, life and death in your fingers." He held up a practice dummy and bent the lesson, and the room stayed silent, the kind of silence that only respect can build. The next day, a group of alien doctors stormed into the room. They expected chaos. Instead, they found rows of students, practicing on wound models, clean stitches, fast reactions, teamwork. One student looked up and said, "We've saved more dummies in 2 days than our last simulation in 2 months." The doctors paused, because they couldn't argue with results. Soon, other academies joined in. Small Earth-style response clubs popped up across alien worlds. They wore gloves, carried simple kits, and trained under pressure. And every one of them began with the same phrase: "When tech fails, no, we don't." But not everyone was happy. Behind the walls of the Galactic Medical Board, a decision was made. "If we let this spread," one director said, "we lose control of training, funding, power." Another nodded. "End it. Discredit him. Break the belief." A plan was set in motion. The human would soon face more than injured students. He would face a system built to silence him. Back at the academy, the human stood before his class. He saw determination in every face, and he knew what was coming. "They'll try to stop this," he said. "Let them try," one alien student replied. "We've already learned something machines can't teach." The human smiled and picked up his needle once more. A new medical revolution begins. The halls of the academy had changed. What was once filled with cold machines and silent pride now echoed with the sounds of real practice: needles, thread, calm voices, focused hands. And it all started with one human, and a decision to act when others hesitated. But change comes with enemies. And now, that change was under attack. The Galactic Medical Board arrived without warning. 7 high-ranking doctors stepped off a golden ship, dressed in flowing robes, faces sharp with judgment. Their mission was clear: shut the human down, end the movement, and restore the old order. Inside the grand hall, hundreds of students and professors gathered. The board stood tall on a raised platform. The lead doctor's voice echoed across the chamber. "This so-called technique is dangerous, unapproved, ancient. It puts lives at risk." He turned to the human standing below. "You have no license, no degree in galactic medicine. And yet, you think you know better? The human stepped forward holding nothing but his kit. I never said I knew more, he said calmly. I said I knew enough to save someone when no one else could. A soft murmur swept the room. The lead doctor narrowed his eyes. And where is your proof? The room fell silent. Then the doors opened. One by one, they entered. The alien student from the one from the wild zone, the dozens who had trained under the human. Then, more than anyone expected, patients from across nearby colonies standing tall with healing stitches still visible on their bodies. They said nothing. They didn't need to. They were living proof. A young alien nurse stepped forward and addressed the board. We were trained by the best machines in the galaxy, she said, but we couldn't stop the bleeding. She pointed at the human. He did, with his hands, with calm, with heart. Tears shimmered in the crowd. The lead doctor's voice cracked. This is not our way. Another student shouted back. Then maybe your way needs to change. Applause erupted. The walls shook, and the human just stood there, silent. That night, a message was sent across the galaxy. Effective immediately, human response techniques will be added to all emergency medical training centers. A new department, Primitive Rapid Aid, is approved. Lead instructor, human trainee. Months later, the academy unveiled its newest wing. No glowing walls, no robotic arms, just tables, simple tools, and hundreds of eager students from every corner of the galaxy. On the wall above the entrance was a quote, "The hand that saves doesn't need to shine. It just needs to know where to press." The human smiled as he walked into his first official. Class students stood, hands steady, minds sharp. He spoke just 5 words. Let's begin with a stitch. And with that, a new kind of medicine began, not powered by tech, but powered by truth.